Hi guys, Chris here, back with a review now of the Xiaomi Redmi Note 5. So I've been using it for over a week, and this truly is, in my opinion, the best budget phone that you will find, priced around 220 US. At least this is the cost of my model here, with the 4 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage. Now this has Qualcomm's latest, you could say, super efficient chip with reasonable power. It's the Snapdragon 636. Now that's got 8 Cryo 260 cores on it, Adreno 509 GPU. It's pretty much a GPU for everyone out there because it's going to have enough power to play all the games. It won't be the fastest, so you won't get the smoothest frame rate, but in general, a very good chipset that is quite power efficient, so it's really easy on the battery. So this phone right here has an 18:9 aspect ratio screen, which is 2160x1080. 2:1 ratio, really. I don't know why anyone's not calling it that. It seems to be all the manufacturers say it's 18:9, but it's 2:1. So this screen here has a maximum brightness of almost 500 lux, about 489 I measured. And that is really decent. Now the sunlight legibility, as you can see here, isn't wonderful. So it's not as good as, say, a Super AMOLED panel. So the blacks as well, they're not going to be as deep, but overall the color reproduction seems quite good. You can tweak that in the settings as well to your own personal preference. And the viewing angles are good. Now they're not, I would say, not as good as I have seen. I mean, I even think the Redmi Note 4 has a slightly better IPS panel in it. But overall, a very decent screen that this has. Now some of the changes with this new model here, so this is the Chinese edition, is that Xiaomi decided to change things up a little bit when it comes to the cameras. So we still have that 5 megapixel sensor used for the depth photos. So that's going to grab the background, so you get the blurred background. But they decided to change the 12 megapixel sensor. This one here has a slightly different lens on it. So it's f1.9 and it has a 1.4 millimeter pixel sized sensor on here, which is a sensor that has dual pixel phase detection autofocus. So what does that jargon mean? It basically means the focus on this mobile phone is really quick. It is very, very fast indeed. And this finally kills the focus hunting issues that has been plaguing Xiaomi's phones for quite some time. So we don't have any issues with that anymore. And it really is a step up in camera performance, as you'll see later on in the review when I get to my camera part and look at the performance of the cameras on it. So the front camera we have up here, this one's 13 megapixels. This is a downgrade, you could say, from the Indian version, which is the Redmi Note 5 Pro. We now have 13 megapixels, but it supports now, and it has depth. So you can take those depth photos with your blurred bokeh background, and it does a reasonable kind of job of that. It does tend to get the stitching a little bit wrong at times. It also has an LED flash, which I, in the beginning, foolishly mistaken for as perhaps a secondary camera, but it kind of looks like one, but it isn't. It's a secondary flash, which is great to have, so that can light up your face for those selfie lovers out there. So overall, it offers quite a bit. Now, in terms of build quality, you can see we've got a full, not quite a full metal unibody. It's the back of it's all metal, but the tops and the bottom are made out of plastic. This to me is a slight disappointment. I would have liked them to have used, say, the unibody from the Mi 5X or even my Mi Max 2. That's quite a good unibody. And we don't have a Type-C port on here, which I feel is a huge error. I mean, come on, Xiaomi, this is 2018. What's the problem with them? Why can they not use Type-C? They think it's only for flagships, but my guess is they probably have like a billion MicroUSB ports that they still need to use up in these phones. So that's why that is happening. So we've got dual SIM support. Now this model, because it's the Chinese one, does not support LTE band 20, which is a bit of a con. So wait and get the global version or the local EU version that will be coming out in Portugal and Spain. Hopefully soon that's supposed to be coming out. So it will take 2 nano SIMs, as you can see with the SIM tray there, or a microSD card if you give up one of those nano SIMs there. So my storage here, I've got 64 gigabytes. Of course, you can put up to, say, 256 gigabytes of microSD card storage in there. So it's great to have that option there. Now the volume buttons that are on the right-hand side here, so these are made out of metal. They've got a good feel to them. They don't rattle around, and overall the position of them to get to them one-handed is perfectly fine. And it's quite a comfortable phone to use. Now, because of the longer screen, perhaps maybe it is a little bit harder to swipe, but really, I don't find it too much of an issue. You can get used to that. So the UI now is shipping, this phone at least, with Android 8.1, which is really good. And there's been no over-the-air updates yet, which is a little bit strange, but perhaps with all the Chinese holidays they've had lately, that's probably why. But hopefully there's going to be a patch coming out, because I have encountered a few problems with the ROM that now and then you will see a little bit of stutter. This happens mostly in the full screen gesture mode, which is something they recently added with the MIUI 9.5, and it just lets you use the screen to the full advantage here. You don't have to have the on-screen navigation button showing all the time. Now, it's very easy to do. You just swipe from the sides to go back, or you can swipe up and then pause, and that brings you to your recent apps. And then of course, if you just swipe straight up, then that's to take you back to the home screen. And I've been using that now for a week, and it's perfectly fine. And I found that when I used my Mi Max 2, I ended up doing that on that phone there. So very easy to get used to those swiping gestures and everything. So let's take a look now at the face unlocking. So using the front-facing camera, it can unlock quite quickly. Now I've found that it works okay, but sometimes when it should work in good light, it just doesn't. Okay, there it worked quite quick. So it's only really in low light that it doesn't work as you'd expect the face unlocking. I'll try it again. And it's just sometimes couldn't recognize you. There it goes. Okay, a little bit slower then. But the fingerprint reader on the back, I mean, this takes under a second to unlock. It's very quick, just like other Redmi devices like the Redmi Note 5, the Redmi Note 4. Really good there. Moving on to battery life now, but before I mention that, charge time. So it is 2 hours and 5 minutes to fully charge it from 5% battery life using the supplied charger. Now, if you use a Qualcomm Quick Charge 3 charger, then you can drop that down to just 1 hour and 49 minutes, which isn't bad. So also talking about not bad is 9 hours and 15 minutes of on-screen time here. This is with the wireless on, with the data enabled as well. I used data a little bit, but most of the time it was actually just wireless. Now this figure is very decent, so it's about 2 days for most people, but it's not quite as good as the Redmi 5 Plus. I managed to get 10 hours of that. So moving from the Snapdragon 625 and then to the 636, you lose about 10% battery life, but I feel it's a welcome trade-off. Now, this is quite heavy use as well, so I was playing Hit, Chrome I used for quite a bit as well, and PUBG. So PUBG for 1 hour and 53 minutes, and you can see here Hit for just over 2 hours, and then Chrome for 1 hour and 32 minutes during that time there. So the Snapdragon 636 is a relatively new chipset. I mean, it only just came out. I'm very interested to see how it performs in synthetic benchmarks. So we get a score here that is quite a bit higher than the Snapdragon 625. So the 625 gets about 70,000, and here we're getting at times almost close to 120,000. This is with the latest version of Antutu. So not a bad result at all. A huge step up, really, from the previous generation of the chipset. Here's the Geekbench 4 score. Now I did test out the internal storage, so it's eMMC 5.1 speed here, and these speeds are okay, kind of to be expected really for this spec of drive. It does not have that fast UFS 2.1 storage that comes on mid-range and flagship devices, of course. GPS performance, I've noticed that it's quite good, just like most of the Qualcomm chipsets really. It's only MediaTek that was having trouble with GPS. Accuracy is always around about 3 and 4 meters, so not bad. And I did test out my wireless speed, so testing the maximum that this wireless AC can output is close to 300 megabits per second here. But then when I tested out 4G, not really too happy with the results here, so I couldn't really get what I would call the normal kind of speeds out of here. And I tested over different days, and maybe this is down to the fact that I have the Chinese version and hasn't got the optimal band of LTE that I'm currently running on. And this is probably the best result I managed to get with the wireless here too. So 134 and then 34 upload. Again, not as fast as other mobile phones that are pushing more around 160 download and about 150 upload as well. So not too sure what is up with the wireless and the 4G performance. Hopefully software updates will address this. Just down the bottom you'll find the 3.5mm headphone jack and the loudspeaker. So there's just one of them, and the volume of it's actually quite decent. I'll give you a sample of that of just a second, but I wanted to mention that the sound output from the 3.5mm headphone jack, it's good, no issues with it. It's not super high quality. It doesn't have a high quality DAC on there or anything like that, but it's good. It's decent, nice volume output as well, and the call quality as well is really good. But let's have a listen to that loudspeaker now. So decent volume coming out of that. It's not super high quality either, the loudspeaker. It is a tiny little bit of bass, a little bit of mids, but overall for the price of this phone, I find it to be good. And yes, on this mobile you also get FM radio with a hardware FM radio tuner, so it's not using any of your data. It's great to have this on here still on mobile phones. So let's move over to the cameras. Now, I covered the camera in depth and did a comparison against the Samsung Galaxy S7, so please check out my video of that. I've got way more samples and even more video samples as well. But you can see that this phone here can take some really good images in daylight. And it can even match or even sometimes better the quality of photo produced by the Samsung Galaxy S7, a 2-year-old flagship. And that is really something. That's amazing results here. You can see, look at these photos. Just check out the clouds. Still got some details of the clouds. Still have some details in the shadows there. So the dynamic range on the rear camera is really good. And what impresses me is the focus. And you can still take a decent macro too with this camera. Now where it isn't so good, as always, is low light. So I'm only going to give you just a few samples here. You can see here that it starts to get a bit of grain, pixely. It's over sharpening. So hopefully maybe with a little bit of tweaking, Xiaomi can improve the quality of low light photography. So on the rear camera and the front camera, we can take those depth effect photos, you know, with the ones with the blurred background that seem to be very popular. So portrait mode on the rear camera does a much better job than the front-facing camera when it comes to stitching, as you can see here. Now, if you zoom in close, especially with the front-facing camera, you can see that at first glance, this photo looks good. Zoom in, and oh, hang on, the stitching just around the side of my face there, not so great. So hopefully this will be improved. So with the native camera app, you can shoot in 1080p with electronic image stabilization. Now, just check out how steady this is. You're probably thinking, well, you must be using your gimbal, surely. But no, yes, a budget phone with this level of stabilization, pretty much unheard of until now. And it really is impressive considering that I'm just holding this with 2 hands, so handheld, walking along, and it's doing a really, really good job. And not only that, for 1080p video, I find the quality to be good. There is some improvements as well to the audio. Although the bitrate is still quite low, it is a little bit louder than most phones you'll see here. Now, because we have that phase detection autofocus, the dual pixel phase detection autofocus, I should say, just like the Samsung Galaxy S7, you find that the focus is pretty much rock solid. Very good, no more focus hunting, so Xiaomi have done an excellent job here with this. Really good. And overall, I'm really impressed, considering that this is about a $220 US mobile phone. Now, if you want to shoot in 4K, you can do this, but you need to use Open Cam. I'll give you a sample of that now. Now with Open Camera, it's not perfect because I do have the electronic image stabilization enabled as well because the hardware support is there. Now you notice that it might drop a few frames now and then, and depending on what bitrate you set. So if you set a really high bitrate, it will tend to drop more frames. But to me, this quality is excellent. It is really, really good. I mean, I'll even walk down these steps here to show you just how that image stabilization is going to work. And I used to be a really strong believer that you must have optical image stabilization, but that really is only needed now for low light photography and not so much with video, because when you have a look at the Google Pixel and now this kind of stabilization, I feel that electronic image stabilization or digital is all you really need. Video sample now in low light, and you can see it's not very good at all. There's a lot of grain. It actually looks so much brighter than it really is. And this is a quick sample as well what the front-facing camera looks like in low light. So you can see it's not great. Again, lots and lots of grain.
Alright, so that wraps up my video here. Xiaomi has set the standard yet again for a budget mobile phone under 250 US. This sells for about 220, and really it just offers so much. So the Snapdragon 636, this is my new favorite chipset because it's got a real, almost a perfect blend of performance, features, and efficiency. So it's not quite as efficient as a Snapdragon 625. It's about 10% less efficient, uses about 10% more power in my testing. So I got 8 to 9 hours of on-screen time with this. With the Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus, I managed to get about 10 hours. So we're losing about an hour there, you can see. 10% really is what it is. But overall, the build quality is decent, it's solid. The screen is fine. I mean, 1080p IPS panel with a maximum brightness of 500 lux is very good.
and we are getting better cameras than you'll ever find really in most other budget phones. Around this price, find me a mobile phone, at least at the time of this review, that will take a better photo than this one, and you will struggle because this has a sensor on the rear of it that has features from flagship mobile phones. So we've got that dual pixel phase detection autofocus, which is very fast. So the same focus technology used in the Samsung Galaxy S7, S8, and even the S9 is using that, the dual pixel technology for the focus. Really good, but what surprised me is if you put photos side by side in certain conditions, the Redmi Note 5 can take a better photo than my Samsung Galaxy S7, and that is a huge and amazing feat for a $220 mobile phone. Just let that sink in. That's kind of amazing. Now in low light, no. Low light, the Galaxy S7 will absolutely kill this mobile phone here. Well, not absolutely, but there's a huge difference. It's a lot better. So it's not perfect. There's a couple of things I'm not too happy about. So first off, there's a couple of UI stutters. So when you swipe up sometimes, especially in the full screen gesture mode, you will see a couple of little tiny micro stutters, a little bit of lag there, but it's not a deal breaker, and Xiaomi, I believe, will be able to patch and fix that because I feel the ROM's quite new there. That's probably the reason why. So we've got Android 8.1 out of the box, which is great to have, so very recent version. And of course, this has MIUI 9.5, one of their latest builds as well too. So that is also good to see. So overall, as a package, as a phone for the price, really good, highly recommended from me. I really don't think Xiaomi could have bettered this, unless of course they put a Type-C port on here, unibody, and NFC, and then it would be a mid-range phone, and they'll be charging an extra 100 or 150 US or more. Thanks a lot for watching this review, and please do check out my camera comparison of the Redmi Note 5 versus Samsung Galaxy S7 up here, and then my latest videos over here. Bye for now.